Jacob, first of all, thank you for joining us to have this kind of open conversation about operating an agency and growing and all the fun stuff around it. So why don't we start by talking about your origin story? Who is BX Studio? How did it happen? Who is Jacob? And why starting an agency?
No, I appreciate that. And it's great to be here. Origin story, I started out more in the film world than, design and technology. Studied film in school. I think film is really the intersection of, creativity and technology too. So, in the course of college, I kind of became aware of digital agencies, web design. There's a period where I was like very focused on that. After school, I kind of like coincidentally ended up finding my way into the agency world. That interned at a production company, and that production company had worked with a lot of agencies. And then, someone had given me advice that it's better to be agency side, so I applied for agency internships. That led to a full-time role at an agency. It was fun. It was a project management role. I think before I applied, I didn't even really know what project management was, but it was similar to film producing that I was doing a lot of. And that ended up as a very corporate environment. I was on the American Express account, large international agency, Digitas. At the time, it was a bit stifling for a young creative disposition, but it's a really incredible learning opportunity. And I learned how work is like structured and delivered and scoped, and how budgets are managed. And a lot of those systems, BX Studio wouldn't have been possible without what I learned. And even under 2 years there, it was around 18 months. But I also always had a kind of inclination towards entrepreneurship when I was in high school. A friend and I founded like a production, small local production company and did client work directly. After a couple of years at Digitas, I was introduced to these guys who had a boutique agency. They weren't having a lot of traction with it. I think, truth be told, they didn't really like the day-to-day work of running it in many ways. And so they brought me in as like a partner with an equity stake. And that was incredibly exciting because Digitas, it was so corporate that I didn't even realize that this world of boutiques existed where relatively normal people had their own agencies. In some cases worked with, big major clients. I thought it all was just kind of locked up at the corporate level. And these companies had been around for decades. And, if you weren't a massive corporation, you didn't stand a chance. And then completely inverted and handed the reins to, a small company. And all of a sudden, from being like at the lowest level of the totem pole in the corporate environment, with discretion to pitch and sell clients and deliver work. And if I didn't know how to do it, we just had to figure it out. We did rebrands and Shopify sites. That's where I learned about Webflow too. And that agency became pretty focused on Webflow, coincidentally, but a lot of Shopify too. We had a good run. When I joined, we had almost no clients. We scaled it up to a business with like some momentum, and we did some work. I'll highlight what that was pitching and winning the Squatty Potty rebrand, which is still like one of my favorite, just like kind of career experiences. It was we did like a photo shoot and video shoots for them too. But then during that time, I'd been following the writing of Peter King, who's an older, he's founded the agency Barrel 20 years ago and has a wonderful blog about agencies, and now has a holding company. And it's funny, I ended up reaching out to Peter at almost the exact time that he started to transition to a focus on his holding company rather than a focus on Barrel, the agency. And we connected. He had just spun out some of basically Barrel had a book of long-term retainer accounts that weren't really aligned with where they were trying to take Barrel as a business. So they'd just carved out those accounts and turned it into a new agency called Vaulted Oak. I guess he looked at, my resume and the work I'd done, and, probably to a certain extent too, my age, 25 or 26 at the time. I was still ready to take a big risk, tested venture. He suggested we go into business together, and almost of the same magnitude of what had happened when I was in corporate, and then they offered me the partnership at Diamond Hook. The idea of working with Peter felt like a similar kind of wow, this is so exciting. I can't believe that this, is number one, I'd move from creative director and partner to CEO. It was a larger stake in the business. And then it was also the opportunity. I was very much figuring it out as I went at Diamond Hook. And my partners were too, working alongside and learning from someone who, basically I viewed as the epitome of what I would want to grow into an industry. Barrel had become a North Star for my own work. So the opportunity to work with someone who had grown an agency of that caliber. January, almost exactly 4 years ago, because it's just the date it's January 2020. And on January 1st, 2022, we put up our single for BX Studio. We'd spent a few months brainstorming different ideas and eventually netted out on Webflow as a good focus. And that ended up being, again, a lot of luck. I think it was kind of the perfect time to found a Webflow agency. And that platform was starting to pick up serious momentum. The enterprise wing of Webflow had been founded relatively recently, and it started to solidify. And but still early enough, that there's something that was really great in our first year was Juana, partner manager at Webflow, noticed that we were working with some bigger brands because of our relationship with Vero, and kind of identified BX Studio as like an agency to support, and that got us on Webflow's radar. Between the holding company had some great relationships. I'd actually built up a better network than I'd realized from my work at Diamond Hook. We got some great introductions from that in our first year, and then coming to get this multiplicative effect of the holding company's introductions, Webflow's introductions, and the Webflow Experts Network, and any momentum I built up on my own. We developed some solid momentum, and have been able to grow consistently since there. Webflow design and development exclusively, all focused on marketing websites, B2B focus, financial services, professional services, hospitality, a lot of technology and startups, of course. And now we're starting to double down on AEO and SEO a bit, but it's basically been 4 years of steady growth in those verticals. So that's a TLDR on us.
Nice.
Yeah.
What a good path to be. And talking about specifically about year one, now looking back, what do you think is something that you totally misjudge about running an agency?
Wow. I mean, it's just incredible. It feels like every year I can't believe how we were doing it a year ago. I even feel that about the beginning of 2025. By the time we got to 2026, the agency had completely transformed. So if we go back to 2022, well, at the beginning, you don't have a lot of clients and you don't have revenue, so you just do everything. And I even did a lot of the development. I would do design at times. I was project managing everything. I would say like the biggest mistake was that didn't go about forecasting the work we had sold in and managing my own allocation in a realistic manner. So we experienced something happened around, I think it was around May or June, and experienced this huge surge of work, and I was still doing a lot of the development, still doing all of the project management, and we really needed project managers. If I were to do that first year differently, I probably would have just decided, I shouldn't do any project management. Every project should be delegated to a project manager. And then around that June, July period, I got completely overwhelmed, almost burned out. I came reached a point of pretty severe burnout. Overall, the business has really succeeded, and we got through, I'd say, about 90% of the work on the level, so to speak. But I can think of at least one relationship from that period that we weren't able to get through at an appropriate level. So I still feel bad about that relationship. That it could have gone better. I also got really lucky. I pulled in someone I'd worked with at the past agency, and she was able to jump on a project last minute, a really tough big project, and just dive into it with no heads up. And that was unfair to her. So you don't want to onboard people in that manner too. And the only reason it worked is because we already had a prior relationship, and she's particularly talented. So I think that's the biggest one. I think, and that's also the trend that continues through each. Often the biggest learning points are you're just I was doing this thing that I could have delegated, and in 2024. I was managing all of the project managers, and that was unsustainable. I was doing all of the sales and managing all of the project managers, and hiring a director of project management was a huge inflection point for me. And then in 2025, sourced delegated sales. Leach, who was a salesperson at Webflow, came aboard, and now he manages our sales pipeline. And I've also realized I shouldn't ever have been doing the sales, and over time you just realize that there's always someone who can do the thing you're doing better than you can do it, particularly often because of ability, and at the very least just because they'll be focused on it. And the sooner you can get that delegated, the better.
Yeah, that's great. You got to a point where in such short amount of time that sometimes I see founders, and I talk for personal experience, so sometimes founders just spend their life just on that, project management and sales, and they can't move away from that. So congrats on getting that done. I think you need some kind of self-awareness, a bit of courage, I would say, to be able to delegate those things that usually are kind of the toughest things to get out of, because you want to control, in the sense of you want to make sure that you are delivering everything properly, but you have to trust it to someone else. So yeah, nice place to be. So now talking about your role today, what is the type of job or role that you do now?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think number one, ultimately it's responsibility for the success of the business. So we need to be generating enough revenue and keeping our costs low enough that we're profitable. I think that's the highest level of description. Something I need to delegate is I'm involved in a lot of the day-to-day like marketing work, like updating our website, preparing case studies. So I think that's something I'm hiring. If anyone knows of anyone, I'm hiring for a marketing manager because I think I've recognized that's the next big opportunity. I think like there's something to be said for like not supporting the team is very important. Really one-on-ones with the directors, being that important sounding board. Also kind of like there are certain times like where things need to be like done a certain way and like intervene but help define the system and processes. I think strategic initiatives, and we hired our SEO and AEO director Nadia. We'll add a big effort for all of the project managers to like introduce her to clients. That's the type of thing that she was new, so she wouldn't have been able to do it. No one else. You can kind of see like, what's like an important initiative that like no one else can do because they're busy with their current work. And sometimes that's like preparing like a new internal system or a process. Recently, I've coded like a client call monitor that's helping everyone like monitor the fact that our clients are satisfied with AI. So that's you got to be careful with stuff like that because you don't want to be like wasting your time on a really consuming side project either. But that actually has proven to be like really valuable. And and I think hiring great people.
Nice. Yeah, we'll have a chance to talk a little bit about the AI part of it and the impact that you see on the agency itself and also on the market. So we'll definitely discuss about that a little bit. Out of curiosity, since you move away from day-to-day project management, are you still part of all projects channels?
Yeah, I think Slack is set up. I'm not sure. I think for the most part, for whatever reason, I get added to all the channels, but I'd say the channels I go into least frequently are actually the project channels. Yeah, because sometimes the client channel, I'll look at the client channels. But what's been really nice about this client call monitor I built is I think the most important part of the relationships usually happens on calls. The fact now this is very recent as of this week, but now I'm monitoring what happens on all of the calls, like if the calls are going well or not. So I actually do feel. If you'd asked me a week ago, I'd say I actually don't know what's happening on most of the accounts. And now I kind of feel the opposite of I'm shocked by how much visibility I have into every account. And it's a really nice transition because, obviously it's better to know things are going well than not. Yeah.
No, of course. Now we can maybe get into a bit of how BX work as a business, because most people see kind of the output. If they go to BX Studio or BX website, they see kind of everything done perfectly, but then they don't kind of see much of the machine that powers it. So in terms of client acquisition, in your 4 years of agency, just for the BX Studio part, what is the least obvious way of bringing clients today? Something people that usually might overlook, especially in this kind of agency area.
Yeah, I think the most important thing is partnerships, and partnerships is a really broad catch-all for how you form relationships with like other organizations that can send you business, and there can be different categories of this. Most of us in the Webflow ecosystem are partners with Webflow, but what you can realize is that type of relationship is really a scalable channel that you can intentionally approach with other partners as well. So you can, those can be other agencies, other technology platforms, investors. Those are what we find to be like the best like partner categories for agencies.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then that's we do a bit of cold email. Now we're trying to host like dinners with people. We're having a couple of dinners, actually a few dinners over the next like month with tech marketing leaders because you realize that's our ICP. Hosting happy hours. Those can also support partnerships. If you invite people that you want to be partners with. And then we have an email list. We're trying to get better at even just the fundamentals of this. Like we still don't have like case study pages up on our website, but that's about to change. Our case study pages will be published in the next week. So you just kind of like the B2B marketing fundamentals. Do you have a great website? Are you putting out case studies? Okay, personal LinkedIn has been really valuable. Just my recent post about this AI tool. It's gotten up to like 13,000 impressions. That's pretty phenomenal reach.
Yeah, good reach.
Yeah.
Right. For someone that is in similar industry as us, in Webflow market specifically, what do you say, or maybe someone that is starting or doesn't have this relationship in place that can be very useful for the business, how you recommend like starting this relationship with Webflow itself?
Hmm. Yeah, well, like I was saying, we got lucky by joining in 2022. I think it's a really different game if you're just starting now. There's a lot of partners, and a lot of partners have built trust with Webflow. And being a partner now, being someone who does Webflow now is just table stakes. So sometimes you get lucky and you find a partner that's just happy to send you work because they like you, or because they're or referral commission. But the closest is you can get to guaranteeing a successful partnership is to give value. Yeah, so really the path to having a good relationship with Webflow at this point would be about how can you help them migrate big companies to Webflow? Depending if the person who's asking about this, let's say they're like a big agency veteran and they have like a lot of relationships at like huge companies, that they could probably do it themselves for most of these like smaller Webflow shops. That's probably ironically probably going to take partnerships with other people. They're going to have to partner with like bigger agencies that introduce them to clients, and then they can introduce those clients to Webflow or something. Because it's tough to get in touch with like the big companies. Yeah.
Still on the business development side of things, what are some things that you tried but didn't quite work?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I think it's funny. I feel like everything we've done to a degree has worked, but we just don't do enough of it. It's really, yeah, it's like, yeah, like I don't know. I'm trying to get leads. Like unless you're like kind of like inventing a channel that isn't part of like marketing best practices, or it's funny, well, because I do want to launch Google Ads, so I am planning to do this again. But I think we did a little bit of Google Ads and we found the leads were low quality, but I still want to go back and do it, in part because I want to offer that to our clients. And I also think it's just good for brand awareness. When people are searching Webflow, they like see you, even if they don't click on the ads themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. We did a paid LinkedIn campaign with Webflow once. They gave us a budget to like run some paid media spend through LinkedIn. But I do think LinkedIn spend, I've heard good things about LinkedIn spend. I think if you're going about it effectively and strategically with like an expert person who knows how to do it, it could work. We just probably at that time didn't have the LinkedIn experience, the paid LinkedIn experience.
Yeah.
Know how to do it. But yeah, but I would say, I guess I could talk, to maybe a better answer to this about is what I think will be the most important channels moving forward. And it's like with AI, like, everyone's going to be overwhelmed with anonymous slop outreach from people they don't know, from cold emails, LinkedIn DMs. If you don't know someone, it's going to be like impossible to get in touch with them. So really, life is business, particularly the agency business, because these are really high trust deals, is going to become about trust and personal relationships. And I also think being in person, physicality, in-person events is going to be more valuable. What I would recommend people double down on is like, how can they lean on, trusted relationships? How can they lean on in-person events? And that's why we like partnerships too, because it's like very high trust. I think for agencies, you'll have to be careful with anything that isn't built on trust. We still get leads from cold outreach. It can work, but I think it's just going to get harder and harder and harder.
Yeah, it makes sense. And now in terms of kind of service offering, you mentioned in the beginning that you started by offering web design and Webflow development, right? But I see from your website that you are now kind of exploring and you saw results on offering branding services and probably most recently, correct me if I'm wrong, SEO and AEO services as well. So what are some of the results that you saw kind of integrating other types of services? Because sometimes in the beginning, I assume that at least in our way, it was like that. We wanted to simplify things a bit. So we didn't want to be like a generalist agency that does like video, SEO, AEO, and all of that jam, because it's kind of easy to try to get them all right instead of being like niche and specific about the services that you provide. But we also started like kind of a year and a half ago, we started offering branding services, and we saw like night and day difference in terms of the quality, like the quality of the work that is produced at the end. So what are some of the outcomes that you saw from that?
Yeah, from moving to SEO and AEO, is that
Yep.
it? Yeah,
And branding.
Yeah, we don't. Yeah, the way we do branding is like really specific. We try to avoid saying we're like a brand identity agency. Often when you redesign a website, you have to do a rebrand either way.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever you want to call it. But yeah, we like to stay focused on like the website. And I think what we noticed was, we were very, very specialized for 3 years, 3.5 years. And, we just did nothing but web design and development. And that was really good because, we just focused on doing that at the highest level possible. And, new services, we did actually try app development, and that went very, very poorly. Like our least successful projects ever were doing like apps because, we just didn't have, the expertise to do it well. Yes, but then what we noticed was like websites are great because people go about looking for like oh, I need a new website, I'm going to find an agency to do it. Oh, I need support with my website, I need an agency. And we were really attracted to like a well-defined service that people kind of independently choose to buy. And we noticed people are doing that with SEO, and now with all the hype around AI, AEO. We also saw AEO was really blowing up, in particular. So we were like, okay, let's like hire someone who's really good at this. And I was really lucky to connect with Nakia Griffith, who's just both a phenomenal expert in the space and also a great salesperson. So she's been able to like found her own department leading the sales as well. And that's been a great approach. And this is like what I would recommend. Yeah, for a big service expansion like that, that's really outside of your area of expertise, we found this to be a really effective approach. Is you just find someone who's like world class at it and make them responsible for that department. Yeah.
Right. So switching gears a bit on the operation side of things more, I saw, it was quite a long time ago, but it is stuck in my head for some time. Like, how crazy, how could myself make that happen? I saw a post from you on LinkedIn, if I'm not mistaken, that at some point, maybe that's kind of the usual for you, but at some point I saw the post like where you were running around 100 plus projects at once. And I was even kind of thinking, I have to talk with Jacob, like, how can this happen? How can this be humanly possible? And what can you share about like, how can you spin so much work without sacrificing quality?
Yeah, I think having good processes, like certain standards, and then having good managers, quality control all the way up and down. And 100 projects can either be a nightmare if you're doing it all yourself, and that's impossible, and you're going to do a terrible job, and you're not going to sleep. Or it can be, if you have good people doing the work, and then good managers supporting the people doing the work, and then you just support the man. It can actually be it can almost be easier than doing like a few projects yourself. And I'm really lucky. I'm really lucky to work with the team. I work with. That they're able to really guide operations, without my direct involvement. And it definitely took some like foundations, I set up along the way to get there. And thankfully, I'm just really lucky to work with the team we have.
Thanks. And do you have, in terms of execution, do you have a process or a way to scale up and down a team depending, like, for example, you might be running 100 projects at once in 2-3 months, but then in the next 3 months, it might be like 50. So you probably need a different volume of resources to be able to accommodate all those projects. So do you have a system to scale a team up and down, or you are able to manage the capacity just with the people that you have full time?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think something that helps is that a lot of our team are hourly. So if there's like minor fluctuations, like let's say 1 month is like there's 20% less work than the previous month, a lot of people might just log less hours. I think we've also been lucky that BX has largely just kept on growing. We haven't had a significant decline in work that necessitated like reducing working with less people. There's just if anything, it's more the struggle of how do we staff all of the work and how do we get all the work done. I'd say in the past year we hit a new scale, meaningful monthly revenue, but we don't always have a lot of it booked out far in advance. And it's been like for the entirety of these 4 years, like you look 3 months out and you're like, well, I hope we sell a lot of work in the next 3 months. And then somehow that has always happened. But we're now starting to get to the scale of like, well, it's not like a 20K difference. It could be like a $100,000, a $200,000 difference, if we don't sell in all of that work. We recently brought on a really talented agency operator, kind of like COO advisor type. He previously was in project management leadership at, actually it's funny, the same holding company where I started my career, like one of the Publicis agencies. He's built out this very sophisticated system where he has, all of the projects that we've sold in and all of the projects that are in our sales pipeline loaded into a pipeline, that also, basically calculates the dollar value of the work we're doing each month. And then, from that, it's like formulas to be like, okay, well, like 25% of this dollar budget should go to PM. And, this means we have we need 500 PM hours this month. And then based on the how many hours, because some of our staff have guaranteed hours, some of our staff are hourly, he has like the team bandwidth. So he's built out a system where we'll be able to monitor this going forward. But so that'll be really useful because I do think the business has changed a bit and like significant fluctuations. We actually do need to monitor that and stay on top of it. So yeah.
Great. Yeah, it definitely sounds sophisticated. So nice to hear that. If you could think of 3 SOPs that you think are crucial Just three. That's probably the hard part. That are crucial, that you couldn't function without it. What are those?
Yeah, that's a good question. Wow. It's funny because like I basically for a period like I wrote all the SOPs and kind of defined the processes. Then when I stepped out of operations, the team really took ownership of the process and improving it on an ongoing basis. We had this list of technical alignment points. And it's like, when you launch a website, you need to like, figure out the email integration. The client needs to set up their Webflow account. You need to set up the DNS. You need to install analytics. Kind of meant that like, any client that did a website with us, they always had Google Analytics installed. It always routed into their email system. We made sure that like, the Webflow account was like ready in time. We got a lot of mileage out of that SOP. But that, that was pretty early on, and I think now the team is figuring out like much more sophisticated processes because, like we're signing, these big web design projects, that, they're very, to complete a big web design project, in like, 10, 12 weeks is really complicated. And particularly to make sure like the client is like aligned with the scope and understands like what the scope is. And, that has to be the, accumulation of, like a dozen SOPs. It's like, how do you run the kickoff? How do you run the sitemap meeting? How do you run the hero directions meeting? When do you figure out like all the graphics across the site? How do you write the SOWs? And how do you, I think the big thing is just how do you build trust with the client so that they trust you and aren't like fighting you during the process and feel like they have to like micromanage you. And then on the other hand, we now half the business is just doing ongoing work with clients. And our Nick who heads up that project management of that department, he defined a lot of processes that are really unique to ongoing work with clients. Like number one, he moved it to an agile model where all the work is done on weekly sprints. So the clients give a ticket and then it's delivered a week later. And that allows us to like really effectively like deliver a lot of tickets in a scalable way across, speaking of dozens of accounts. So there's all these processes that like I'm aware the team has implemented them to a degree, but I have kind of like less visibility into like, which ones were truly like the most like crucial to success. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, I think there's too much complexity to really say like these are the three most important things. It's like,
Got it.
Yeah.
And now it's related to the SOPs, just kind of to align and to make sure that we try at least to all clients to have the same experience, hopefully a good one. I want to approach a topic that many agencies avoid talking about, or because it's difficult. So which is difficult clients. And there are three layers I would like to cover. One is kind of during the sales phase. I know that you are moving away a little bit from that, but you have a lot of experience doing that part. What are some red flags do you pay attention during a sales call that probably would make you think that this client is not a fit?
That's really interesting. I kind of like reframing from away. I guess true. Like occasionally there is a difficult client. I actually think for the most part, those are very few and far between. Kind of like a needle in a haystack type experience. Particularly if you think about it first from this perspective, are they an ICP fit? I think this is something I've only really started to internalize in the past few months. A lot of things are downstream of ICP, like budget, openness to change orders, timeline, and clients that are in your ICP are very likely to accept the budgets you need to work, be open to change orders when they're required, and then also likely, just be good collaborators during the process, And often, when you think of the collaborations that went south, it's because whether it was the type of project or the type of business that you're working with, they're not actually in your ICP. And so a lot of things that people think, oh, like that client was really difficult. It's like, well, if they're like a really early stage startup and they have like very little funding, they're going to be tight with the initial budget. They're going to fight you on every change order. That tension can like, really spiral. Sometimes during sales, your gut tells you something. That's really important to listen to. The best way to know if a client is going to be difficult is just if you can sense that during sales. Sales is interesting. You want to run a really good sales experience because it's actually showing the client what it's like to work with you. The moment they're with you for sales, they're already working with you. And in reverse, the client is showing you what it's like to work with them. So if they're, if someone's a jerk in sales, they're clearly going to be a jerk, when you work with them. It's like that phrase, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. But overall, I think the projects that have been difficult, I don't think have been because of the client personalities, but rather either mistakes on our end or because they just weren't, we shouldn't have taken on the project in the first place if we were being more disciplined.
Right. No, it makes sense. But when the wrong client is already in the work, maybe during the sales call, maybe during the sales call, maybe we weren't even kind of in touch with the real person that you will be working on a day-to-day basis, and then like someone shows off and it's like completely different from who you spoke to during the sales process. How do you handle misalignment or friction that happens either way?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think again, how do you build trust like with whoever you have to work with?
Mm-hmm.
And it's true, a stakeholder transition is a really critical event for an agency client relationship. If there's a new stakeholder, we work with a couple of coaches that both are like, yeah, when there's a new stakeholder, you basically have to treat the account as like already lost. And you're basically going back to the sales process and you're having to pitch them. That is just like a new person that you need to convince that they should work with your agency. And if you don't kind of approach it with those stakes, it's very very easy to lose the relationship. I wouldn't even say I'm necessarily the best. This is where I think our creative director Vincent has really good instincts for like how do you kind of like start a relationship on he's very focused on like the kickoff of our website redesign projects. How do those first two meetings build a lot of trust? So that then the stakeholder. From there, it's like, like once they trust you, things tend to be a lot easier. But then that also takes a lot of great project management. Like, do you set expectations? Do you tell them this is like the timeline, this is what we're going to do during each week, this is what you're going to have to do during each week? Did you design a good process that does set them up to like launch on time? Does the process deliver the quality they're hoping within the timeline they wanted? Is the scope complete, or do you need to start giving them heads up that it's going to require like more change orders? There's so many things that go into it. Yeah, it's very challenging to do all of the things on our end that
Mm-hmm.
allow clients to have a good experience. And I think overall, clients that are difficult in the absence of any mistakes on the agency's end are pretty rare. Yeah,
Yeah.
but of course they do exist.
Yeah. Did you guys ever have like a horror story of having to fire a client?
That's interesting. Man, I think honestly probably to our detriment. We just for years ran BX in such a way that like we just said yes to everything. We were just focused on winning as many clients as possible. Yeah, now like I'm saying the opposite. I'm very focused on like ICP fit and being more so. Yeah, we have a big book of existing clients. At our scale, it can just be you take on a bad relationship and it's actually just unprofitable. And you're adding
Mm-hmm.
complexity and stress to the system for no benefit. We've definitely never like canceled a project that we were scoped for, but I think there are clients that we'd kind of try to not win the next project with them. Like maybe we
Mm-hmm.
ask for a proposal and like we never ship it, or like we refer them to someone else, stuff like that. Well, actually, I mean, what's something we're doing a lot is like that we know how long the work takes, but we're stricter about pricing. We refer work to freelancers. Like I saw. Yeah, it's sad. This actually was with the startup that I would say is an ICP fit. They have a good amount of funding, but they asked for a website in 2 weeks, and we just can't do that. So, we sent them this guy who has like a 2-week package. I don't know how he does it, but we just send people to him when they have like unreasonable expectations. Yeah.
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 No, that makes sense. So maybe we can talk a bit of a macro view on the Webflow AI and kind of future models in the industry.
Yeah.
Where do you see Webflow or agencies that have Webflow at their core heading over the next 3-5 years? And probably 3-5 years is like a long time, especially like the speed that AI goes into. But let's change it to like 2-3 years.
Yeah, that's interesting. So what we're hoping, and this might not fully play out, is that Webflow's momentum as like a top enterprise CMS continues, and a lot of big companies, migrate to Webflow. And I think there's going to be like a healthy amount of work migrating and supporting like big organizations on Webflow. I do think we might see a lot of like the lower end of the market shift towards Framer, and I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of like the smaller Webflow agencies end up doing a lot of Framer work.
Mm-hmm.
I also think we're going to see some really interesting new opportunities with vibe coding, and a lot of the agencies will end up doing vibe coded websites. As of now, it seems like that's going to be on like the lower end of the market, but we'll see what happens. The technology might improve faster than we expect. I think a big thing to watch too is how effective Webflow is at incorporating vibe coding technology into its platform. And that could mean that the Webflow becomes a very good CMS for the low end of the market because it has great vibe coding. And then it also could help accelerate it in the enterprise segment. If they can really nail enterprise level vibe coding, that's the thing we're interested to watch, is like who figures out enterprise level website vibe coding management first. And we think Webflow is a really good horse to bet on in that race, but you never know. And we think and that whoever figures that out will have the best enterprise.
Yeah, agree. And out of curiosity, what is your opinion and recommendation? Because that's a common question from leads usually, which is, what is the difference between Webflow and Framer? And when do you recommend Framer to your clients when they if they reach out to you with that word in mind?
Yeah, I think frameworks are better if you want to move fast and break things and you want to like, just hack on your site more. I think if you want like a really rigid, like enterprise level design system, Webflow is better. I think if you want to choose a platform and never leave it, Webflow is better because you can move up market with it. But, or assuming you're ambitious about your business and like you intend to grow it, if you, if you, framework could be a great long-term solve if you, you aren't trying to like, really scale your team. And,
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And on the topic of AI, I would like to hear about specific applications and value that it's bringing to your team. You specifically said on your role now at BX Studio that you created some type of system that analyzes calls and all that. And so that could be one of the values that, or in applications of AI to your role. But what are other applications that you see specific on, for example, delivery in terms of speed and margins? What are some of applications of AI that you saw like bringing value to the agency?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely am constantly in touch with AI as kind of like a personal advisor. I ask it. We did great. I had to get like a car repair, and asking AI like, how much should this charge? Is the guy ripping me off? I ask it about taxes. I ask it about complex topics I don't know about. So it's funny. I actually think I use AI more just like in a kind of like day-to-day context than I do in the business. My big breakthrough with AI has been I built this tool that the big AI thing actually was first we started using a call recorder and then and then you can ask the AI about the call recordings and turning calls into these like highly portable assets that you can analyze and quickly recall information from. That was a huge, but that's been at BX I think for like a year and a half. But it's the type of thing that like if you're not using a call recorder, it's just like I don't know how we like ran the business without it. It's just amazing. And then what I'm really excited about, this is a new tool, so who knows, maybe it'll crash and burn and like something horrible will happen and I'll have to cancel. But what I'm loving in the past week is now every time someone at BX has a call with an external email, it sends an analysis of that call to a leadership only Slack channel. It has like sentiment analysis, growth opportunities, churn risk. Yeah, it feels like a complete 180 of like, how I'm able to relate to the business. It was literally impossible to understand how well everything was going. First, I could get reports, but like now I have like direct access to like what's happening every single day in every single client interaction. And it's just unbelievable. It feels like I have like this ultimate dashboard now. So yeah.
Yeah, that's actually amazing. So maybe at some point we see a product coming from that you can sell to agencies to get that overview and sentiment on the agency.
Yeah.
And values. So have you seen with this all AI rage, have you seen any shift in terms of how clients value an agency, either to the good side or to the bad side?
Yeah, sometimes you get the question, why don't we do this with AI? But the truth is, like, if you want really top level design work or you want like a really scalable CMS, right now, AI isn't a threat to that. AI could maybe, if you want to take a design and quickly turn it into a landing page on like custom hosting that you manage with vibe coding, yeah, I could do that, but it is a very different like use case than what our agencies do. So yeah, we're lucky. AI is definitely getting really close to us. I feel like it's like the barbarians are at the gate, so to speak. I think and hopefully like this might be harder than we think it'll be, but we can be the ones that really kind of spearhead AI. We hopefully our team can be very good at using AI. So it's so beneficial for clients to hire us because we use AI better than they might know how to do in specific contexts, the same way, like we won't. Yeah. So, I think they're, ultimately, agencies like, ours, just develop technical expertise and become really good at using a specific tool in a specific business context. And I think AI is just going to create new applications, for us that we could develop expertise in and offer services to clients at the end of the day. So,
yeah. So coming to the end of this session, where do you see BX Studio from what you can share publicly? Where do you see BX Studio going, or in terms of vision that you're comfortable sharing in the next year or 2 years? Where do you see BX Studio going?
Yeah, I want BX to be like a really top of the line, B2B focused digital experience and organic growth agency. Yeah. And yeah, just keep scaling that, work with great clients, do great work, build long-term relationships, grow more recurring revenue, and just build a really top of the line shop that does B2B digital experience and growth work. Yeah.
Great. And closing question, what is one thing that you're struggling right now that maybe someone that is watching can probably reach out to you and help?
I need a marketing manager. I need to hire a marketing manager. I need to hire an account manager. And I want to hire people who can help us develop more leads. So, biz dev, go to market, whatever that is. So, yeah, if you know some talented, and it'd be interested to connect with people who are really, really great at B2B marketing that could help us build out more B2B marketing capabilities, maybe paid media, like whatever, however we can help B2B clients grow their business. I want to talk to people who are experts in that, experts at, B2B growth and, might be interested in like working with BX. So.
Great. I hope that this gets you some contacts. And Jacob, thank you so much for taking the time. It was really nice to learn from you.
Yeah, thanks so much for the chat. I really appreciate the opportunity, and let's catch up soon.
Sounds good.